A lot of the labels in Daily Med have the NCI dosage forms at the top, and it's really confusing when you see medicated patch or vaginal ring instead of the transdermal system or vaginal system. What are your plans to either deprecate the NCI dose forms or work with NCI to change the dose forms to align more with USP?
You hit it twice. There you go.
So that's a good question. We do receive that comment, and I think what you're talking about is the computer-generated dosage form and names at the top of a page versus what's in the official labeling. I do not. I don't know of any plans personally. Any plans of sort of aligning those things, because I think I'm actually I don't know. That's a little bit out of, as I don't know that portion of how it appears, how that computer thing is generated on Daily Med. I don't know, but we can discuss afterwards, because yeah, we can discuss that afterwards to try to figure that out.
Tammy, I could add to that. So I think not from an FDA position, but a personal position, I agree with you that it potentially is confusing if a healthcare provider is looking at the prescribing information and there is a difference between the dosage form terminology and the product title and the product quality sections of the prescribing information and the information that appears at the top of the SPL file, which is outside of the prescribing information. So my understanding from the technical folks is that that is included for all products and not just prescription drug products. So we're talking about dietary supplements, we're talking about over-the-counter products regulated under NDAs and under the monograph system, and other products. So it's really for more of the entire universe of products that have SPL files. But personally, I agree with you that it is confusing.
All right, if there's any other questions in the room, come on up to the mic, but let's go ahead and go with our first online question, please.
If a product is, for instance, a transdermal system, and the words transdermal system are in the name of the established name, do you also need to list the route of administration for transdermal use?
In that instance, transdermal, so let's sort of break that down. In terms of the components of the name, transdermal in that instance is considered the route, and system is considered the dosage form. So in a sense, transdermal system already includes the route. The other way to think of it is if it's a system in which there's a topical system, in which topical would in that instance would be considered the route.
Okay. Other online question, please.
If other products with the same active ingredient have historically not included the salt name equivalency statement in section 11 description, is it necessary for a new NDA with the same active ingredient to include the salt equivalency statement?
Yes. If your product, yes, the answer to that would be yes. We will see as we go through labeling that there's some products that may need a little edits to the labeling and sort of update it. But if your product is new and it was under review, that would be a requirement to include an equivalency statement in the labeling.
To add to Jibril's comment, this is part of the broader talk that we discussed yesterday about updating prescribing information. One may have a prescribing information that's up to date in 2005, which is fantastic, but since 2005, there may be 15, actually, as Brenda said, we have 25 guidances out there that were recently published. So over time, things potentially get out of date. We try to update it.
Does the guidance on product titles only apply to PLR format prescribing information?
Thanks for that question. Yes, the guidance is written specifically for the product title and the highlights of prescribing information for PLR labeling.
Okay, thanks. Does capitalization matter for route of administration in the drug product name, drug injection, or drug for injection?
Specifically to the carton and container, as far as a product title, Debbie kind of went through that, where it would be lowercase and everything is bolded. But for the carton and container, there's some flexibility there. I think it helps in some instances to have the dosage form capitalized, but it's not a requirement to have a capital T for tablets.
And don't be shy here in the room, but let's go ahead and go on to our next online question if we have one.
Should the strength be included in the title for topical and vaginal dosage forms?
So speaking specifically of the product title and highlights, the strength, the guidance recommends that the strength not be included in the product title. Again, this is beyond the 4 required elements of the product title, and as discussed, we try to keep the information in the product title as clear as possible and to consist simply of those 4 required elements.
Got another one for us back there, Renew?
Yes. You mentioned that sachet is an outdated term. If there are granules in a packet or sachet, what is the most appropriate term to use in the labeling? Packet or sachet?
Oh, sorry, packet.
All right.
Okay.
I like those nice, clear answers.
You want to get to all of these questions?
Do we have any more online questions?
We do. We have quite a few. If an
Okay.
excipient is not USP or NF, but the drug product is in the USP, do you include the USP after the established name?
Can you repeat that again?
Sure. If an excipient is not USP or NF, but the drug product is in the USP, do you include USP after the established name?
Okay. I'm not totally sure about the understanding the excipient part of the question, but I'll answer the question in terms of if the drug product is recognized in USP, is USP required in the name? And the answer to that is no. USP is not required to be put at the end of the established name. It's optional. The applicant gets to choose whether they want to include USP at the end of the name or not. That being said, I'll just go a little further because sometimes we get this question. We get this question often. Is if I do not include USP in the name, am I still required to meet the USP monograph on my product? And the answer to that is yes. I mean, obviously you can label what other aspect of the monograph is that you do not meet, but the USP inclusion at the end of the name is optional. But if your product is a subject of a USP monograph, then you have to follow the monograph.
Okay. The initial U.S. approval date. If it is an NDA, do I include the projected approval date in the submitted labeling?
Typically, applicants will include placeholders of XXXX. I think it would be acceptable though too, and you could anticipate the year of initial U.S. approval. It wouldn't necessarily be a wrong thing to do. I think the most important point here is, as John Gallagher discussed yesterday, to ensure that when you're nearing, approval near the end, when everything is getting finished up, that it is ensured that prior to that label being approved, that the year of initial approval is in that field and it is accurate.
Thank you. The next question is, what is the rationale for placing the dosage form inside the parentheses versus outside? Which is preferred by FDA?
Actually, I think the product title guidance talks about that a little bit as well. But it's sort of, it's easier to explain graphically, but I'll try to explain it verbally. So if you have a product, Drugazide tablets, and you decide to put the parentheses to include Drugazide and tablets, it's sort of stating that that drug product proprietary name is really for Drugazide tablets. Now, if you, in the other scenario, if you had Drugazide tablets and the parentheses was just surrounding the drug component of the name or the active ingredient, active moiety part of the name Drugazide, and then you have a extension of that product where you come out with different dosage forms, and it's more appropriate to continue with the parentheses around the drug component portion of the name, because then you'll have other dosage forms to follow. But look at the product title guidance. It explains it better, and then you can visually see it. It's tough to explain verbally, but product title guidance.
Okay. What is the most appropriate dosage form for a concentrated solution that needs to be diluted prior to intravenous infusion?
Repeat that first part again.
What is the most appropriate dosage form for a concentrated solution that needs to be diluted prior to intravenous infusion?
Okay. So a few things there that's not in the question, but I'll sort of fill it in. So I'm assuming that the product is a liquid and that it's concentrate, that it's a liquid that needs to be further diluted prior to administration. And let's just assume that it's a liquid and it's not an injectable suspension, because I guess you wouldn't want to administer that IV. But let's say it's a solution. The appropriate dosage form would be injection. And then it must be accompanied by a labeling statement that would say that the product must be diluted prior to administration. So we would not put concentrate in the name. The only, because concentrate could mean two things. It could mean that it needs to be diluted, or it could mean that it's a higher potency or a higher strength. So to sort of take away that ambiguity, the nomenclature guidelines is sort of saying, look, well, if it needs to be diluted, then you need to put a instruction statement in the labels and labeling that says it must be diluted. That being said, the one example that I did have, which was, is this frozen?
Yeah,
Here we go. Potassium chloride. Anyone want to take a guess about the other exception of the potassium chloride in terms of the name? There was something different about that name. So this product must be diluted. You know, patients were having events, and there was some deaths of people being administered potassium chloride injection directly without it being diluted. So we changed the established name to, and we included for injection to sort of denote it needed to be diluted, and that's not common. But outside of potassium chloride for injection concentrate, we do not include concentrate in the name drug product names.
Okay, got another one back there, Renu?
Yes. For a Schedule 4 controlled substance, is the term C4 in the product title acceptable?
The product title recommends that for controlled substances that the controlled substance symbol be added to the end, so it would be preceded by a comma and then capital letter C, and it can be Roman numeral 4, or it could be dash Roman numeral 4. And there's examples in the guidance illustrating those recommendations.
Okay, we got 1 minute left, and we got one question left.
Sure. You stated that the proprietary name should be in uppercase letters in the product title. Does the proprietary name need to be displayed in a similar fashion throughout the rest of the PI?
As I mentioned during my presentation, the recommendations and the guidance regarding the presentation of the required elements pertain to the product title and highlights only. I would like to note that in highlights, there is 2 other places that the proprietary name should be in uppercase letters, and that's in the highlights limitation statement. So it appears twice in the highlight limitation statement, it appears in the product title, and then throughout the remaining portion of the prescribing information, it may be presented differently. It could be presented in title case letters. And similarly, on carton and container labeling, the proprietary name may be formatted differently.
Okay, thank you much. That is all the time we have for questions. Please help me thank our panel for sharing.